Well, we can call the meeting to order. Brian was having issues with probably doing this meeting with the presentations due to the size that he can see for his grid work on his iPad. So I was asked to chair this meeting, if that's all right, if everybody's good.
If anybody objects, they can chair it themselves.
Yeah, get on that, Neil. It's like my third meeting with your face today. It's awesome. All righty, so we'll call the meeting to order. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interests? Any conflict, municipal conflict? Anybody? I'm seeing shaking heads. Okay, so we'll say none declared. And then the agenda, for confirmation of the agenda. Was there any changes or additions or anything that needed to be done with the agenda? No? Okay, nobody's saying anything. All right, so then we can confirm the agenda by consensus. That was as circulated. And then the minutes. Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes that were from our last meeting on March 3rd? And was there any changes, any additions, any corrections that we needed to do? I'm not seeing anything. Okay. All righty. So then we will do, oh, Pat. I can't, no, you're still on mute, Pat.
Hi, I just want to confirm, Devlin, that I have the right. Yep, I have no changes. Thank you. I was looking at the old agenda. Devlin, thank you. No changes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So then we'll confirm those as presented and by consensus then. All righty. So moving along the agenda, we have presentations this evening. Now, Devlin, are you wanting to bring them all in individually? Like, well, we'll have the first KIPP presentation. So then do you want us to hold our questions until she's presented? We can do our questions, and then after she leaves, then we can have the next presentation come in?
Yeah, I think the plan that Pat and I talked about was to have them present for 10 minutes and then have maybe 5 minutes for clarifying questions and then on to the next person.
Okay, so then this is just strictly.
And then afterwards we can make a decision on everything.
Okay, all right. And is everybody okay with that? We have KIPP that's going to be coming in. Staci Barron is going to be our first presentation. Okay. All righty. Did we want to welcome her in? There she is. Hi, Staci. Welcome to the committee. We have you on mute currently. Are you able to unmute there?
Okay. Hi.
Hi. So we will just have you do your presentation for your Elora water project. And then we will hold our questions until you're done. Devlin said we will give you 10 minutes and then we will do like a little question and answer period after with you, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right.
So I had sent a blurb with the package I was sent a few weeks ago with why I'm maybe sitting here today. Back when we were first fundraising for KIPP in 2008, one of our dreams was to have water down at the site. And back then, one of the biggest issues was that there are some little toxic zones in the ground. And so removing that soil and having it trucked to St. Thomas at $800 a truckload, that was sort of the big hill that we were going to be climbing. And we decided to sort of forego that project at that time and just to get the site open. And then a few years later, we installed a secondary shelter there adjacent to the kitchen. And we put in 2 tanks for water. You've probably seen them along, around farms. And one was to hold fresh water, and the other one was to take in the gray water. And that's been working okay. It's a bit tricky to get the gray water removed every season because the tanks are small and the trucks with their vacuums are large. And so I can't have a big truck with a big vacuum come, or it'll suck the tube, like it'll suck the box inside out. And So I have to have a smaller truck come down, and the number of companies use that kind of technology are getting smaller. But we have been able to sort of tag on to Campbell's, and they have been holding the contract with the township for porta potties throughout and they've been great with coming down. So I've been very grateful, but I just always feel like it's sort of a perilous situation. We have to tag on to whenever they come to town, etc. So moving forward, we thought we would apply for the grant for to bring water down and have water taken back up to the municipal system. And just with some miscommunications, I think it was just vastly unquoted. And so when we were talking to some of the diggers in town who are allowed to dig, there's only, I think, 1 or 2 that are permitted to do township projects. They were saying that the grinder pump to get the gray water back up the hill is, $15,000 to $20,000 as well. There's so much rock that they would have to dig through to get to our site that we'd be looking at around $100,000. So the project went from 35 to 100,000, and we decided that that was just more than we could manage with our little site making cinnamon buns and pizza. So we're here today to talk to you about the possibility of the team approving our second request, which is shelter down at the site. And it's something that is on our wish list. And it's something that we'll be looking at and talking to different people around town. There's a gentleman that actually makes awnings for a living. He lives downtown. And we've talked to him about, doing something that's just semi-permanent, but really it's not ideal. It would be difficult to put what we need up and then not have it dump water on people, sort of like those sunshades. They're sort of triangular or, anyways. So what we are looking for is some actual shelter. And I have a couple of quotes that I have from a couple of 3 different companies with various sizings, but we're looking at our hope is to get a 16 by 24 foot shelter down there on the actual KIPP site, not on the grass. And it would go adjacent to our oven, closer to it. Because what we find is we need to sort of follow health guidelines and have our food as protected as possible from the elements above us. So when the pizzas come out of the oven, we need to kind of have them covered and ready to go out. And what now are these 2 10 by 10 foot tents that aren't in good shape, that kind of their legs kind of do this, and we're using duct tape. And our hope was to really just do something better instead of replacing those, because they're also not tall enough for a lot of our volunteers. So people are bonking their head, and I could go on. So I have a couple of quotes here. I can just do like a visual. Here's one. And this is, I think, well, I don't want to call it the best quote, but it's the most inclusive quote. So it was really difficult trying to get out of these guys. I want prices for engineering, stamp drawings, the freight. Like, I want you to include everything, and I don't want there to be any surprises where like a little not-for-profit, and we can't have like a $10,000 surprise at the end of this. So the only thing that they didn't include was footings. And I haven't talked to some contractors in town, and they all feel like that we could get that done for less than $5,000. So say this one in particular is our 16 by 24, and it came in at $36,721 with tax and not including the footings. It's sort of like my best photo to show you at this point. The other ones are, black and white drawings, engineering drawings. But so that's what we're to do. We generally utilize all of the space when we are running a bake. So we do feel like that we could use this large space and put out more tables. have our volunteers be sheltered from the elements, say if it's, if it's raining all of a sudden, or just places to relax that are out of the sun. Yeah, that our current kind of 10 by 20 is sort of tight for us with the 2 tents. And the other thing too is trying to get the tents, like the overhangs, like on those tents, to come together so that we don't have rain and things falling through the cracks and coming down on the bake tables as well. Yeah, so that's about it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Staci. Now for any questions from the members? Anyone? Neil, I see you there.
Thanks, Kim. Staci, you've got 30,000 there from the MacDonald Trust Fund. So are you planning on raising, what are you going to be short if you give the footings, you're another 11K?
I think I asked for 35,000.
Oh, okay. I'm just reading. I thought it was 30 here. Okay. So you've got 35 and so then you're only short 6 then. You can fundraise for that?
Yeah. If there's any leftover from anywhere else.
That's always the issue. Yeah.
Yeah, we are pretty good at fundraising. Like we have, we use our bakes to fundraise. So when we run a pizza night, we generally, on a successful pizza night, we'll walk away with maybe $900 after expenses. And after we pay our talent, we often have music. So they're $300 or $400, that kind of thing. And then we also do well with our cinnamon bun bakes. We have been, it has been tricky this last year or so with regards to COVID. Last year we had some vandalism on the site. In addition to our insurance, we spent $2,800 last year on things that we couldn't control. And this year we're hopeful that we can get a couple of bakes in, maybe towards the end of the summer as people are vaccinated. A lot of our volunteers are older, so I'm hoping that maybe our group will be vaccinated and then we'll be able to get something going. So my hope is that maybe we'll just have to find like maybe 5,000 or less. I was able to get some things donated in the past, and so I'll just sort of work those again. And I think we'd also like to look at maybe honoring Anita Stewart as well down at the site. There has been some discussion. She was very involved with KIPP in terms of helping to promote us, coming down to our fundraisers, bringing some of her guests down over the years. She was always part of our International Food Day bakes with Janjeet and Manjeet up from the gas station who would come down, and it's been great. So we'd love to do something to honor her as well down at the site. It could be, a sign on the shelter, but yeah, it's sort of our plan B too, to have funds for that.
So the other question I had is when KIPP isn't operating, there are days where you're not baking, right? Is it something you think of as the shelter being used by other people? Like say people are in the park and they want to have a picnic, is the shelter be accessible for them to sit there and if they brought their own food when you're not open?
Absolutely. All the time when I walk my dog around Bissell Park, I'm seeing that picnic tables are being moved site. We have these big copper wire tables, like the wooden spools that are always being moved around for people. So it's clearly being used when we're not there. And I would love to have something that's, even a bit more organized for them to sit under. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we have Brian with a question.
Hi, Staci. I was just going to ask, tell us a little bit about the structure, the materials used in the one you're favoring.
Okay, so it is metal. So there it is again. So we're looking at a 4-column design, a 24 gauge multi-rib metal roof panel, ribs at 12-inch centers, a 412 roof slope, and also some electrical cutouts, which is really nice. We asked to have that so we could get some lighting in there for when we do our evening bakes, because we just usually have construction lights and it's not ideal. So it'd be great to have something that's permanent there. And KIPP does hold the electricity for sort of the east end of the park. So that would be easy for us to connect. Yeah, that's about the most exciting part of it. And we get it probably red to match the site.
Is it an earth floor or some sort of constructed floor?
So KIPP is actually, the space is a former receiving dock back in the day when it was a foundry. And so it's all cement down there.
Great.
So we would put the footings into the cement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All righty. I think we have time for another question there. Jen?
Yeah, just one question, just to clarify the breakdown of the cost that you're looking for. So the electricity has been taken care of. So it's like the water, wastewater, and then the pavilion. What was the breakdown of the costs again?
With regards to the shelter?
To the shelter, and then was there still water and
no
wastewater?
water.
No.
So no, I was sort of giving you a story about the history of the water and sort of
Okay.
where we were at, like how we thought, our vision, and
Okay.
then what we have now, which works well enough.
Okay.
Yeah, so the idea by bringing down municipal water was that we could actually expand our possibilities for the type of food that we create. So we have a special license or permit under the health unit for things pepperoni, but I could never bring like lamb or steak or anything down there to put on the pizzas. It has to be like nuclear meat. Like pepperoni is like that, and cheese and what is they called baked shelf items. So things like, pies and breads and things like that aren't going to hurt anybody. So the water that we have is for washing dishes. It's not for drinking. There is bleach in it to keep it stable. But yeah, the hope was to do that, to bring it down municipal water and, the huge possibilities, but it is what it is, right? And we're just like the inside the kitchen is it's just 9 by 12 on the outside. It's tight to do much more. So anyways, we wanted to be able to do more, to host more things, but sometimes things happen for a reason, right?
Okay. Well, that will be our time. Kind of have to call time on that. That's good. Everybody has their questions answered that they were needing answered. Okay, then I just want to say thank you to Staci for attending, filling
Thank
us
you
in.
for hearing me out.
That's great. Well, thank you.
Okay, we'll see you again.
Okay. All righty. Then Devlin, do we know who will be speaking for the next one? Is it Shelia? It's a group.
Yes, they have a group of people coming, so we'll have to
Okay.
coordinate with them.
All righty. Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing Shawn has joined us and Shelia, hi. And Lianne, is it Lianne? And then Matt. There's 4, that's good. And who will be speaking for the group?
I'll be speaking on behalf of the Elora Center for the Arts.
Okay,
It's Matt.
Matt Ladner, that's very good. Well, thank you. Thank you and welcome to everybody. We are basically doing like a presentation for 10 minutes. and you can present your information that you would like us to know. And then we're doing a question and answer period. So we're asking everybody to ask their questions at the end. So we have about 5 minutes at the end. Is that all right? Sufficient? Good? Everybody's okay? All righty. Well then, Matt, I'll ask you to start off with your presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Kim. Am I just for clarification? Am I presenting? Do you have a preference which order I present in?
It's whichever that you're comfortable with. We would like to hear, the first one on our agenda is your multi-use performing arts and cultural event center. So that would be your first one on our agenda.
Okay, so then that is the presentation that I will be presenting along with Shawn Waters from Riverfest.
Riverfest, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So Shawn, I see, is here as well. Good evening, Shawn.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you to the committee for the opportunity to present on these projects. So the first project we are discussing is the multi-use facility as described by Kim. And we wanted to follow up on the fact that we had submitted a request in December of this past year to replace the feasibility study with an outdoor performance pavilion. And I think it's important to start off by going back to the beginning. I'm just not sure if the committee has been, everyone on the committee has been in place since the initial award of the MacDonald Fund Trust money. But our initial application was actually for a multi-use indoor performing arts facility that would be used by a number of community groups and facilities ranging from dance and acting to music and all sorts of other uses in a multi-use facility. When the CSAC committee and council awarded the funds, what was granted were $100,000 towards a feasibility study towards that space that I have just outlined. And so in December, what we had applied for and what we are now reviewing was an application to the committee to consider utilizing the funds for a pavilion, which would in fact replace the original application we had made, but would have the same intent with an outdoor space. So it would be the same users, it would be the same user groups that would utilize a facility that would be a much lower cost and much easier to build within the $100,000 limit, and would provide a wonderful facility outdoors in the center of Elora in green space for these types of user groups that had initially been the intent of our original application. And so I just wanted to bring all the committee members and provide everyone with a little bit of context on that background, because the change of scope looks like it's from a feasibility study to a pavilion, when in fact it was from a performing arts center to a feasibility study and back to a pavilion. So I just wanted to clarify that point. So the other key point that I just want to address around this is that obviously one of the considerations that our board and working closely with Riverfest we worked on jointly was in evaluating the usefulness of a feasibility study. It became quite apparent with the onset of COVID and with the impact that we've all experienced around COVID that there was no short-term value in a feasibility study from our perspective, because the input we got from firms that did these types of feasibility studies was that it's a new day and a new world, and frankly, not only are we not certain of when we can all gather in large groups again, but we don't know about the data pre-COVID-19, whether that would actually be particularly useful for examining this type of facility post-COVID-19. And so that was another factor in our decision to apply to the committee around the change of the use of funds. So we have included in our package, and hopefully everyone's had a chance to receive it, a number of renderings of what the pavilion might look like, could look like. And maybe I'll let Shawn do a little speaking around the thinking behind what the pavilion might look like and what it would and would not be. You're on mute, Shawn.
Hello. Now you can hear me now? Okay, thanks. Thanks very much, Matt, for that, for the intro and sort of the background, which obviously is important segue for why we've approached the group to look at the reallocation of these funds. I've been involved with Riverfest for a very long time, basically from the onset of the program there. And we've grown that program, as everyone who's been to it has seen that. We thought there would be a lot of value in having a sort of a performing arts or a stage like in the green space at the Art Center. We knew that there would be a good use from the Art Center folks and from programs that like Riverfest that we do our programming once a year or a couple times a year, but there'd be the opportunity to utilize that. But we were looking what this particular facility would be it wouldn't be electrified, but at times we could electrify it, because that's typically what we do is we bring in a stage when we're doing our events. We bring in power and we put on an event. But what we were looking at in this particular facility would be something that the Art Center could use on a regular basis. They could have there are other things that it could be hosted by, like Art in the Park. Obviously, there's dance groups and various groups within Centre Wellington that could be able to utilize this facility. And maybe on Riverfest weekend, we'd have the opportunity to use this facility. I much like my Matt, going from a proposal in terms of having an art center or an art facility to a report. We didn't feel that would be a real testament to the MacDonald Fund in terms of a legacy. And then we thought that there would be the best opportunity to have something here that would become MacDonald Stage or something that would be left as a legacy for the community, and obviously something for the Art Center. And these types of facilities are very important for our community, as we know, and as things progress. And this is a great opportunity for the community. The facility itself is placed in the corner of the green space and it directed towards the building. We did look at sort of sound, and then if you had allowed us to move ahead on it, we would bring in a sound consultant to look at in terms of setting up the facility and making sure that there wasn't any impact on the community. We do that typically anyways with Riverfest in terms of adjusting the sound and that type of thing, but we would locate that facility would be best to coexist with our community. And the vast majority of the time, probably 90% or 95% of the time, it wouldn't be electrified. There's no intent, there would be no, at this stage, to run power or any of that type of thing. It would really just be a stage facility. We're looking at a prefab facility that can be brought in, set up, put on a concrete base, and then have a location that can accommodate folks. There has been, even before Riverfest was in Bissell Park, there had been many events within the green space at the Art Center where there was a stage and that type of thing. And they were typically well received by the community, and it'd just be sort of a continuation of that program. And we know that it's very important for the community. So from a fairly high level, that was sort of the script of it. And then if you've had a chance to take a look at the images within the report, it's just to sort of give you a sort of an idea of what that facility or that structure would look like.
A couple of other points just from my perspective. One of the things we've seen from federal and provincial governments is these types of green spaces being flexible and providing spaces, particularly during COVID, for communities to experience. And so, in addition to the user groups like Elora Festival Singers and the community theaters and Riverfest, as mentioned, ourselves, our tenants, We also view this as a space where people can simply congregate and enjoy outdoors. If you've been to a place like Godrich, which has a lovely bandstand, these just become nice community congregating areas. And we've always viewed our location being adjacent to Bissell Park as a very lovely green space. And I think we've all seen the increase both of local users and of tourists of that space along the river. And so it's a bit of an extension of that. So I think on that note, we're probably close to 10 minutes, and I think we've hit on the high points. We'd like to leave an opportunity for questions.
Yes, that's great. Well, thank you for that. And then from the committee members, is there any questions? Brian?
Not to get too precise, but I'm just curious about, you're looking at I think the drawing shows a 24 by 36 foot pad. And are you pretty confident that $100,000 would do this, or do you see other funding being involved?
I talked to some prefab makers of the build stages, and that would probably be the largest extent. It would probably be smaller than that, but we could, yeah, definitely we can bring it in with the budget. We would have to do some in-kind stuff. I'm connected to an engineering firm, so there would be, sort of the ability to bring in sort of my friends to help out with this, and then obviously go to the community. I don't know if you were aware, but I was involved with the design of the green space in Elora, and when we were building that space, we did a lot of in-kind stuff. So I would go that route as well. So we don't anticipate that we'd come back to the township for additional funds, but we would do it. And I'm a project manager, so I've built lots of things. So I do understand the types of inputs that are required for these types of facilities.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Jen, you have a question?
Yes. A question. So when council sent the recommendation to the committee here, we were to look at like the change in scope and intent. So I'm just curious how you guys would respond to the argument that, the funds were awarded to a project, not to an organization, and was graded based on that project. So if we see like a change in scope, should we not make the funds available again to all the Elora organizations to kind of reapply and reallocate those funds?
I would argue no. The application was for a performing arts center the only difference would be it would have been indoors versus outdoors. And again, to take us back to the beginning of the process, the application which was awarded was for money for a performing arts center. The directive was for a feasibility study, which I think we've tried to explain why we think that's no longer relevant, and the outdoor pavilion really satisfies the same purpose as our original application. I don't know, Shawn, if you have anything to add to that response.
Yeah, and my fear is, and you may be aware, I've been on council both at the local and the county level, and I always get a bit worried about doing a report and nothing ever happening as a result of it. And I just look at the opportunity to have these resources, these financial resources, obviously from an altruistic person in the MacDonald Fund, and the opportunity to build something and leave a legacy, as opposed to leaving a report.
Okay, and then we have Grace with a question.
Kim, could I just make one additional comment to that?
Oh, yes, Sheila.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment too that the process involved for all of us who are largely volunteers working on this and trying to respond to the community and do something to make our facility more flexible and broader appealing. It was a process where we always discussed this project. It's not as if we just pulled this out of the hat at the last minute after COVID. There was a long process. We had a lot of board meetings. We met with Riverfest. We always had this project in mind. So there's a very strong correlation between the original intent and application
And where you've ended.
and where we've ended up. Yes.
Yeah.
After
Okay.
a lot of volunteer hours, I will add.
All righty. We had one last question. I think we have time for just the one last. Grace, you had?
Just curious, if you are awarded this money, can you go ahead based on, like, will there be any difficulties that you have to get the community to approve the noise level and whatnot? Or if you get the money, can you go ahead with it?
Is that, are you addressing us or the committee or even? I
You
don't know if there's
guys, like,
anyone, council?
The committee, like, do you know that you could go ahead, or could you maybe not be able to go ahead even if we gave you the money?
I think my understanding would be we'd still have to dialogue with staff in terms of what the process would be. Obviously, we would have a program, how that would be spelt out. There may be a requirement to chat with the community, but we're not, it is a structure, but it's not a electrified, or it's basically a band shell, if you'd like to, so and it's in keeping sort of what the activities of the community, but I can't really speak for staff or council that way.
Neil, you want to make a point there?
Yeah, I would just ask, the only question I would have for the group is that, have you reached out to the neighbors in the surrounding area, letting them know you're doing, even if it is an unamplified performance center, it's still going to create some kind of sound coming out of there. That's why they're designed that way. And has there been any engagement of the residents in the surrounding area?
No, because we didn't know even if we could get to this point, coming back to the group here. So
Okay.
We have no hesitation in doing that, but we wanted to speak, and our hope would be that there would be an interest on this group to move ahead. So.
Okay.
All righty. That's going to be about our time limit for questions there. I hope everybody had a chance. Now we're going to have the same group, but it's different. So this one is for the Elora Center for the Arts, Building Enhancements and Accessibility. Now, Matt, you're going to speak to this one too as well?
Yeah, I'll speak to this one, and Shawn, thanks for your input on the first presentation. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Hi,
Bye now.
Shawn.
So our accessible washrooms, enhanced and accessible front entrance, and replacement of 3 heritage windows. Just a reminder that we were granted $380,000 under the MacDonald fund for this project. We find ourselves here today. The most recent update I can provide is that in February of 2021, so just a couple of months ago, with a letter of support from the municipality, we applied for the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund. So we'd be utilizing the MacDonald Fund grant as an important component for matching funds. This is the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund grant is for heritage buildings and matches up to 50% of dollars contributed. And so this grant was, we had applied back late last year for the municipality's support, very similar to the ICIP grant, which we had applied for about 18 months ago, which had a very lengthy delay, primarily due to COVID in terms of its award. So it was only in October of last year that we found out we were unsuccessful for that grant. And so we have applied for this Canada Cultural Spaces Fund grant, which frankly, we believe we are much better suited in terms of being a successful applicant for. We've had extensive dialogue for over a year with the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund granting officers to understand the types of projects that are interested in supporting, and the fact that we're a culturally significant building coupled with a heritage building, and our location and our charitable mandate are all boxes that we tick for this particular grant. It's been an incredibly lengthy process. Our application took about a year to develop, in part, as Shelia mentioned, because we work on a part-time basis as volunteers, and our paid staff are often on a part-time basis. It's also just an incredibly arduous process. as you would expect for a grant of this size. And so we've had to submit 5-year operating forecasts, as well as a lot of historical information and a business plan around the center. So all to say that we have submitted that. The grant review process can take 4 to 7 months, which on the outside puts us in September in terms of finding out about a successful award on this project. It is possible that we'll find out prior to that, but that's the outside date that we are looking at. The reason we've applied for the grant is obviously that the renderings that we have worked on along with SRM architects in early consultation meetings with municipal staff has dictated that the amount of funds required to build the project are slightly north of $1 million. And so we're looking at a combination of the MacDonald fund money, a small loan to the center from our existing bank, and also some community fundraising, all of which in concert would work towards a successful outcome for a large enhanced entrance and foyer, accessible new washrooms for the facility, and just a great new space for the center, increased storage, a new servery, and a number of other items that we have talked about previously. In terms of timeframes for the project, having worked through these with our architect and in discussions with municipal staff in terms of reasonable timeframes, assuming we can get to a successful bid sometime late this summer or fall, we would start looking at finalizing drawings and doing pre-consultation with township staff and site plan applications early in the fall this year. We're ready to go on that. We just are being very cautious because we have taken the approach of not wanting to spend dollars on more finalized drawings for submission to the municipality before we're certain of what we can actually build, because otherwise we're just spending the $380,000 on a project that would either need amending or might not materialize. And so we've taken a very cautious approach on that. In the event we are not able to secure the Canada Cultural Spaces funding, what we will do is revert back to a much more modest build, and that will still allow us to build accessible washrooms and put in a very, very small modified front entrance that will simply allow for accessibility but no real expansion, as well as replace the heritage windows. And we are comfortable we can do all of that for the $380,000. We just felt that much like we had proposed during the ICIP process, that the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund allowed us to do it really right with funding from other organizations. And so that's why we took the approach of approaching council for this particular project. So inside the package we submitted, we have included the SRM drawings of the proposed expansion and washrooms. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to see those. But in short, that's where we're at. That's consistent with what we've messaged to council and to staff and hopefully to the committee as well over the last couple of years. And so we're on what we consider to be the home stretch. We're very hopeful. We have, you never know with grants, but we have strong indications from working with within the organization with Canada Cultural Spaces Fund that we are the type of project that is often successful. And so we are looking forward to a favorable outcome and moving forward on this project.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that update. Now, questions? Anybody from the committee have a question? Jen?
Yeah, just one question. So in the event that you're not successful, you'll kind of revert back to those originals. And just to confirm, like the funding provided would cover that, right? There wouldn't be additional funding requirements on top of that.
That's correct. We would look, Jen, to at that point build modified, nothing like what's been presented in here. We would scale back, and we would only address the areas of importance that were initially applied for in the grant. And so that would be effectively, instead of a new front entrance, probably what we would get would be an accessible front entrance.
Yeah.
And instead of 4 new washrooms, we would probably have an accessible washroom or 2, whatever code required. And because we would modify the building envelope, that requirement would be smaller, and we would look to replace the windows. And so we're comfortable that the 380,000 would cover those versus the plan that's in front of you right now.
And just a follow up to that. So again, just worst case scenario, not successful, or you're reverting to your old plan. Would you see the completion date for that still happening within 2021, or do you think you would still be looking into a 2022 completion?
Oh yeah, so no, in either scenario, I think it would only be the planning component that gets completed in 2021, because it would really almost be the same time frame, because we would still need either the award or the non-award of the CCSF grant in the fall. Then we would have to commence the site plan approval process and the formal building application, working with staff, which we would see probably in both instances making sense to complete over the fall and winter, with a look towards construction starting in the spring of 2022. The actual construction project, of course, would be shorter, just because the scope would be so much less.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Brian, you have a question?
Just remind me how much you've applied for the Canada Cultural Spaces program.
It's roughly 1.25 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Pat, you have a question?
Just if I could just add something for Brian. Brian, that number includes a very healthy contingency figure. And it also includes, in addition to a very healthy contingency, it includes $100,000 in costs, which we've elected to include because we don't know the outcome of, and that is for potential municipal water upgrade. And at the recommendation of our architect, we were encouraged to plan for needing to do that, even though we're just not certain. There may be no cost, but we've all of the modeling we've done, including our 5-year financial forecasts, are always done on the conservative side. So in terms of revenue, we've been conservative. In terms of expenses, we've been realistic. And in terms of our building cost, we've taken the outside number. So that 1.25 is on the high side, in our opinion. It also is a very high per square foot build cost. Now, if you're paying attention these days to the cost of wood and construction projects, I feel like what we thought was really high is probably actually going to be realistic by the time we build.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Pat?
Hi, yeah, just for some clarity on Brian's question. So the project is 1.2, 380 came from MacDonald, and I'm just you're saying that you could apply for the full gap from Canada Culture, because you mentioned something about additional debt and additional fundraising. If you could just clearly outline the budget, and then if there is fundraising required, then is that going to delay the build? That I think is just, I'm not sure if that's what you were getting at, Brian, but that would help the committee understand your project.
Yeah, no, 380s from the MacDonald Fund. I don't have the budget right in front of me, so you'll have to forgive me. It's roughly 380,000 from the MacDonald Fund. It's about $100,000 low interest loan that we have access to. And then it's about 100. I think it was either $75,000 or $100,000 of fundraising from the community, and then add all that up and match it, and you get to approximately 1.2 million. And my numbers they're close, if not exact.
Pat,
And,
does that
and to
answer?
answer the other part of your question, Pat, we don't foresee any issues around fundraising $100,000 for a capital campaign project. We've paid very close attention to other capital campaigns in the region, and we don't. Everyone we've talked to, including we've been able to retain through a grant a professional fundraiser who worked on 10 Carden and Guelph. And our initial discussions with her is that 100,000 is way too small a number. We should actually be shooting for something closer to $500,000 from the community. So we don't foresee any issues with fundraising for that portion, nor do we view it as delaying the project because of the way the cash flow has been projected.
Okay. Good. All righty. Do we have time? Sheila?
I was just going to add one more PS to that comment about the fundraising. We've also been in touch with Lori Arsenault, who is the hospital, the Groves Foundation chair, fundraising person. And she's very willing to help us. She's a big supporter of the Arts Center. So that's another big plus to have her support. And I also wanted to say very quickly, our architect is Edward Thomas. Edward was a past chair of the Arts Center and knows the building really, really well, and has already put hours and hours of free time to the project. So we're in a very good situation for this kind of capital expansion. That's all. Now I'll be quiet.
It's okay. All righty. Is everybody satisfied with questions there? Everybody's good? All righty. I guess that takes us to the end. So, well, thank
Okay,
you.
great.
Sorry,
Well-
Kim, I'm not sure
Yeah.
you saw Dean's hand
Oh,
kind
I
of come
did
above
not.
his head there.
Oh.
Sorry, I just jumped in last second. So through listening to this, in the spirit of the original application, what was the intent to apply for further granting, or did that come along after the fact when that opportunity came available to you guys?
When we first applied, a couple of things. The cost of building was substantially less than now. So I think we always intended to seek grants. One of the operating models of the center is to match grants whenever they're available, Dean. So that was part of it. Certainly as far back as, I guess it's probably more than 2 years ago now, when we first applied for the ICIP grant with the support of the municipality, it was always the intention to leverage the money so that we could build more by effectively receiving 50% for free.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, no problem.
All righty. Well, then that will call an end to that. That's great. And I'd like to thank the three of you for coming to present to us. That answered a lot of questions that we had.
Super. Well, thank you for the opportunity, everyone, and have a great evening.
Great. Thanks. You too.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye. All righty. There we go. Does anybody have any questions now to township or anything that we need for that? Or we're good? Keep moving? No? Okay. So looking on the agenda under action items, we have review of the grants, and there's the other two are under there that we did not get presentations from. Are we wanting to go over those, Dorothy?
I don't know. Are we, Pat? Do you want me to touch base on those two?
Well, I'm just mindful of Jen's time as well. So
Yeah.
before she has to exit, maybe she has some comment. Absolutely. And I think, Dorothy, you want to explain, the group did not ask for these two. They did ask for the Bungalow 55, and maybe you want to touch on why they're not part of this conversation today.
But Jen,
I know, Jen, you have to leave, so I'll turn it back over to Kim.
Sorry, guys. My little guy's getting his first reconciliation, so I have to scoot out soon. But yeah, like I keep going back and looking at the recommendation that was presented to us, like the recommendation to this committee by council. And what they have asked us to advise on is like the timing and the feasibility of the projects. They specifically did kind of point out, the request by the Elora Center of the Arts and Riverfest to alter the scope and intent of the project. So that, like, when I see that and you're altering the scope and the intent, I've always had the struggle of, if it was based on, like I kind of asked our second delegation there, if it was awarded and graded on a particular project and that scope has changed, is it fair to kind of allow that organization to change the scope and still be awarded those funds without kind of having that regraded or reallocated or reopened up to the Elora community? So I still struggle with that. I think their answers were really good on that, and I think I feel like coming in tonight, I was really firm on that. When I also looked at it, council has already approved a couple motions to support the Elora Center of the Arts, and and them pursuing those matching grant opportunities. So, if it's one thing to provide recommendation, but like they already have like that council motion there. So I kind of feel like with the last one in particular, where they have that council support, that, I feel like that support has already been granted there. And now, like, we kind of are waiting till September of this year to see if that will be awarded. With the other ones, I think the Riverfest, the second delegation there, I think they did do a really good job at kind of showing that the intent of the project really is the same. And I think they did sway me there and kind of confirming that I think the intent is there. I think they got a clear timeline. They're the only ones that actually have the ample funding and a clear timeline. So to me, I don't have, like, to me, like, you have the timeline, you have the funding. To me, that made their case even stronger than even potentially the other two, except for the fact that the third delegation's got that council motion. The KIPP one, again, they're all great organizations. They're all great for the Elora community. I was kind of concerned a little bit because the report that came to us talked about the water, and then when we saw their response come in, then it was talking about a pavilion, but that's not what we talked about at the last meeting. We had talked about their water services. So, like, I feel like that one has changed, I feel like, a couple times. And more concerning with that one is, like, the timelines are unknown and there's still quite a lot of fundraising that's kind of not known there. So if we're looking at the council recommendations, do these all have reasonable expectations for completion dates? I would be a little bit concerned to say, I don't think at this point, I don't think KIPP would be able to put those on that now. I don't know. That's my recommendation. Like, that's just kind of my comments coming out of it all. I would have liked to just kind of go back to council and been like, I think, it should be they should be looked at, change in scope and, open up. But like I said, I think Riverfest, I think they have a good timeline. They have ample funding. The intent, I think, is still similar. ECTA, the council has already provided that support. I think you got to continue with that support. KIPP, I'm not so sure about. And again, mainly because I think the flag there is the amount of fundraising. And so that puts out all of that. Those are my comments.
Alrighty. Okay, so do we want to discuss the Elora sculpture project in the Bissell Park then as well? And Jen, do you need to go now?
Yes, I'm gonna slip out, but thank you all, and yeah, looking forward to hear what you guys decide.
Great, thanks.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
All right. So Dorothy, did we want to go over these two?
Sure. I don't have that package in front of me because I'm only on my laptop. So I'll start with the sculpture project. As you know, this committee worked with that group to help narrow down a place where we can get the sculpture built. And we can't seem to agree on a location with them. And then we've met with the mayor and we've met with the CAO and trying to find alternate locations. Long story short, they're pretty much pulling the plug on the project. They don't want to do it anymore. They feel as though they've just met too many roadblocks with the township, and the fact that they've lost some volunteers on their committee. So they're really struggling as a committee as well. So right now we don't have anybody to do a sculpture for Mr. MacDonald. So I guess as a committee, we've got to make a recommendation what we want to do with that $25,000. And as far as Bungalow 55, they were awarded almost 23,000 and some change. They no longer exist. They applied for funding when they had their building on Getty Street. And since they've got the money, it was all awarded for projects on that property. So they sold the building, and I have had it confirmed as an organization, they no longer exist. So we now have $23,195 to, I guess, decide what. Pat, is that right? Is this committee going to decide, or is that going into the general coffers? Can you remind me of that?
Council, as part of their request for recommendations, it states, sorry, I'm just going to go back to it. But yes, it does ask for this group to comment. Sorry, I've just got to scroll down to where that was in the list of things. Give me a sec. Hold on. There was two questions. One was direction on any funding that was awarded but not remitted as a result of the project not being able to fill the project work, and any other recommendation on projects currently not completed. So if the sculpture group would fall into that category, as well as, I'm assuming, as well as the
Bungalow 55.
Bungalow 55. So
yeah.
In any other project, if this group decided that there would not be moving forward, then that money would also have to go back into that discussion piece on how to reallocate any funds that were not awarded. Yeah.
Any questions? I feel bad about not getting the sculpture. To me, that was an important piece of this whole funding, but I don't know what the answer is to that one. I don't know any sculptors that we could get something done. Sorry, Neil, go ahead.
Well, my question was going to be to you and Pat about the sculpture, because I think the sculpture is important. The bogging down in that was the location, correct? The $25,000 was to contract to a sculptor or an artist to make a sculpture for us. What the committee got bogged down in is they had a concept of where things should be or where the sculpture should go. And, you know, I did get an email from one of them, and I had to remind them that it wasn't staff or council that turned down the locations they wanted. It was this committee. You guys can remember that discussion clearly, where they wanted it to go back into Victoria Park. And we felt as a group, or this committee felt anyway, that putting it back there behind the township and in the trees wasn't something that we wanted as far as what should happen. So I guess my question to Pat or Dorothy, can this committee say, you know, why don't we or the staff choose a site and that's suitable, or you bring us several sites and then we just tender the $25,000 to an artist and say, this is where it's going. Create us a sculpture. Is that a possibility? Is that something that we could look at doing?
I wouldn't know where to begin, Neil. I like your idea, but as far as commissioning an artist to do, yeah, I don't know. Kurt, you've got your hand up.
That's just an interesting point, because we're struggling with organizations who want to change their project, but now we're also struggling with a project to keep without an organization to push it.
Yeah.
Which is a flip from some of the others. but I think it's perhaps something worth exploring if the spirit of the whole thing was to approve the projects, and that's one where it was an approved, valued project that we couldn't come to. The organization can't move forward with it anymore, but the project itself, the spirit of the project, still must have some importance if we agreed upon on having it.
Well, this committee can make whatever recommendations it chooses, and we take it back to council for approval. So that's another option, right? That's why we're here.
Okay. Brian, did you have a question there?
Could we just simply find a compromise location and then activate that group? I don't think they've actually withdrawn, have they? Or maybe you know something later than my discussion.
Well, personally, if you read their response back at the bottom, it was kind of like a no.
Okay, well, I think we should find a way to go ahead. And we choose a location, and there are a lot of artists that are looking for work. And I'm sure, I'm looking at Grace, and I'm sure that she knows lots of people who are sculptors. I can certainly think of some. And I think that's too good a project to lose, but I don't know what the ramifications are of us sort of taking it in hand and say, because they got the grant. Well, that's a different kind of grant though, isn't it? Because that was really an internal, it was a committee of people that kind of reported to us. I mean, there's a kind of they're a different kind of organization. It's not their sculpture, it's the town's sculpture.
Mm-hmm. Pat, you have a point?
Township had final say on the location. And I think that's where we've kind of gone a little bit south, because the township wouldn't agree to some of the locations either. So sorry, Pat, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so the agreement states that the location had to be mutually agreed upon, and that could not be found in a timely manner where they could continue the project. So they've answered, due to lengthy delays, we cannot complete the project. That is the final statement in their responses. Having said all of that, I look at our team and our staff, and I think, I'm not sure that we have the capacity, knowledge, and skill set to commission an artist to take this project on. There was a lot of discussion about, what would the sculpture look like? Would it be, something this community would support? And so there was going to be a competition. They were going to put that out there. They would select the top 3, then and there would be a committee, which included the mayor on it, to do that. And then they would narrow it down to, then they would all get a little bit of money, and each artist would do a mini rendering kind of thing of their sculpture. And then once again, there would be a final selection by a group that was assigned by the sculpture committee. I think they would assign 3 people to have a, fair decision. So there was a lot of process in selecting the sculpture and the artist involved in the process that was written up in that agreement. And that's a process, I from my understanding, meeting with them, and perhaps Grace can help us out, but that seems to be a regular procedure that would happen for a public sculpture that was going to be installed in a public place. We could still go through that process, but I'm just warning you that it's not about just hiring anyone and saying, please build us a sculpture. And the concern, of course, is be careful what you wish for. You might get something that not anybody wants to put out. So, and because we can't get this group to do it, I'm concerned that has the project lost interest? If the group who's pursuing this has lost interest in the project, is this something we should take charge of? I'll throw that out there. It's absolutely up to you guys, but and obviously we'd like to see this come to fruition. This was a great project, but once again, I believe the groups that the committee, the CSAC committee, way back when, changed the scope of the project they applied for, struggled the most with getting their project to fruition. So for example, this project, they actually applied for $150,000, if I remember correctly, or 125, Dorothy, to do 5 or 6 or something sculptures throughout the community, and none of them were related to Jack R. MacDonald. The CSAC committee then came back and said, we're not going to give you all that money, but we'll give you 25,000 and we'd like you to do this. So it wasn't their original thought process. And I believe the feasibility study kind of fell into that same category. It wasn't really what they asked for, so they struggled with the next steps and how to utilize that funding. So I'm just gonna, that's just more information and background for you. I think I have that right, Dorothy, as far as how the sculpture committee was awarded and moved through the award process with the original CSAC committee.
And yes, they originally asked for 150,000.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Grace?
I was just going to say, I agree with Dorothy that it's, as much as we want a sculpture, it's a huge undertaking and huge process to go through to select a sculpture, the artist. You would really have to have a group of people who are committed to that process. I'm not sure that, I don't think we could just do it. You know, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know whether there's any other group that could take it. Or like, I mean, is the so they're just not, are they not doing their sculptures anymore? Like the ones around town? Are they still a group at all, or is it sort of dissolved?
No,
No,
they're doing their
continuing
project.
They're continuing on with their sculpture program in both towns, for sure.
And I think even in their assessment, they said that that's what they want to focus on, is doing their annual one that they do every year.
That's correct.
That's what they want to focus on with their limited committee now. So
it's funny because I was looking at when I was reading the information for today, I was looking at it and I was sort of wondering if we'd made a mistake rejecting their locations. Because I agreed at the time, I think we were pretty much unanimous in rejecting them and asking for it to be by the bridge. But when I read what a quiet man he was and all that, when I read all that again, I thought maybe we should have trusted their opinion. I don't know. It's probably too late to backtrack, but that's just what I was thinking today.
okay, so that's the sculpture project information. And then the Bissell Park project information was also included in our package. And that's the multi-use surface upgrade. And then from my understanding, this is all moving ahead fine. It's just because of COVID, there's been some delays. Am I correct in that assessment? So that one's not really a huge concern. It's not a change of scope or anything. It's just time delays. That's right. Okay. All right. So does anybody have any questions for Town Pat?
I just wanted to add, I believe it was in their application. They did actually request to come today to speak to the group, but we felt we couldn't add them to the agenda because that was not the direction that CSAC had given to staff at the time. So they'd be willing to come to this group. They would like, just like KIPP, any of the money that is not being used to be considered for their phase 2 of the project. I believe Matt could speak better to their project specifically, but they have enough money for phase 1 and would still be looking for additional funding for the phase 2 and 3 of their project. So that was the request they made, and as a staff we felt we could not ask them to come as that was not our direction, but you could ask them to come in May if you want to hear from them. I just wanted to add that bit there.
Now, when they said about their phase 2, but there was no price or anything with it, there was no amount given. Anybody?
I think Matt could better answer this this project and how they're approaching it better than I.
Yeah, so it's hard for them to put a price on it. It all depends on the in-kind work that's involved, and and I think it might be beneficial if they came and spoke, and you guys can ask those questions. I think that would be beneficial for our next meeting.
Okay. Would the members of the committee, would they like the Bissell Park project to come and speak in May for an update? Everybody feeling good? Want to hear from them? We got a thumbs up there. We're good. Okay. Pat, can we do that? Thanks. Okay, so then they will come and then we can see, but judging because their first phase was $350,000, I'm assuming that the extra 40,000 we may end up with wouldn't be a lot to contribute to a phase 2, but that's okay. All right, so there's no questions, other questions there. And now, Pat, are you wanting us to make recommendations of what we're going to do with these presentations this evening? Like how we're wanting to move ahead, recommendations to council for the ones that we've got? Because it seems like a recommendation. Do we have to do a recommendation for the sculpture project to release them from their contract? Is that something we need?
Well, I'm open to whatever you guys feel you can tackle tonight. Eventually, we do need to send recommendations to council, and perhaps Neil could comment on that. But that was the direction given to this team here, to provide direction on all of those questions and any others that you guys felt were important for council to hear about. So we're not there yet. So, I mean, I think it would be, so the timing for each project, yes, you're going to need to provide expectations on when you want these projects to be completed, the ones that don't have done yet. The Elora Center for the Arts and Riverfest, and now also KIPP requesting a change of scope. So is it a change of scope, and can you approve that? That's sort of bullets 2 and 3 on the questions. And then within that, you know, if KIPP still has fundraising, what parameters around that agreement and timing need to be there? Direction on any funding that was awarded but not used, of course, that's a conversation you will need to have if you're going to allocate it somewhere or have a competition for it, or what you would like to recommend council do with that funding. And then, of course, anything else you want to make as a recommendation for council's consideration. I'm sure Neil has some thoughts on what council needs to help. I know from a staff perspective, you can see how we were kind of stopped in our tracks on some of these projects without recommendations and further direction. That is why we went to council. And then they have now asked your team, this team here, to make those recommendations. So if you can get through some of it tonight, if we can put a stop time on this meeting, and at least get through some of the, and hear from everybody's thoughts, I think that would be great, Kim, but I'll leave that to you as the chair.
Well, I was just wondering if we could do like a consensus on the 3 that we heard from today and kind of get our feelings while everything's fresh in our minds, and then we can at least make notes on that to put towards the recommendations, and how everybody's kind of feeling for those. But I would also like to throw, because we didn't hear from them, the sculpture project in there, because it's kind of seeming like a simple one for resolution. So there would be 4 to deal with. And also to make note of the bungalow 55, that would be another release from the agreement as well. So is everybody else on board, kind of, if the sculpture project's not going to go ahead and bungalow 55 is not going to go ahead, that it would be along the lines of a release from the agreement, or that that's not going to be done and the money can come back? The other committee members, is everybody kind of feeling that way? That would be bungalow 55 and then the sculpture project. Brian?
I have to say that I'm troubled by the sculpture project, and I know I personally supported the idea of it being near the bridge, but I think, I don't want to belabor this, but it just seems like a fairly important part of the piece, as Neil said. And I'm just wondering, ever the arbitrator, if there isn't a possibility to have a discussion with a couple of those people and just say, is there a compromise about where the thing could be? Because I'm not sure that I feel that strongly about where it should be in retrospect. And mea culpa. I know I was pretty adamant about the bridge, but I'm not as adamant anymore, because I have actually walked around in the community and looked at other places and thought, that wouldn't be bad. The park behind the town halls. I mean, it all depends, of course, on the nature of the sculpture. And I know we don't want people cutting themselves, or somebody said tripping over it. It may be that the bridge area is not the right place. but I don't understand why. I just think, I'm wondering if we can at least have a conversation with them, but maybe I'm just being an emo kind of guy, and but that's it. I'm just saying that bothers me. The other ones seem a little more clear cut to me.
Okay, well, do we want to put a pin in this one and we can discuss it after?
If possible.
Okay, Neil?
You can always tell us, and when I say us, I mean council, that you like the idea of a sculpture project, that this thing is bogged down, and ask them for their recommendation back to you, what they want you to do. That you may find that council says, you know what, we want this to honor Jack R. MacDonald. So let's strike a new committee, a new sculpture committee. And what's the rush? The money is there. We're in the middle of COVID, so there's not a whole lot getting done anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe we let it rest for a while. Like these are all suggestions you guys could give to us, and we can have the debate.
Okay.
I'm a big proponent of this sculpture. I think something needs to be done to say thank you to this man for everything that he has done for this community. And where it goes, if we're going to get bogged down in that, then maybe, we start brainstorming other ideas. I don't think it's something that needs to be decided tonight. I think you could give a recommendation to council to get their thoughts and opinions on it. And then this committee can revisit it again. I don't think that one needs to be decided tonight. The rest of them, I think we got to have some conversations about that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
let's dig into that.
So we'll put that to
Duncan 55
the,
is fine, right? Because they're gone. And you can suggest or recommend to council that we reassign that money or put it back out to bid for projects. The other three, I think we need to have some discussions around, and that's my 2 cents worth.
okay. So shall we discuss KIPP? Do we want to do a discussion for like 5 minutes on each? Like, are we wanting a time frame? Because there's still more on the agenda that we need to have updates for. Do we want to, Pat?
I think you guys should take as much time as you need to come to a decision and not put a timeline on it. And yeah, obviously we want to try and finish the meeting by 8, but the rest of the agenda can be really swiftly gotten through, I believe. I'll throw that out there. I don't think you want to shortchange yourselves on a decision, but as chair, you need to get us to that decision, I think, so that we can move on.
All righty. Okay, so the KIPP. And
I
we
think Kirk had his hand up there, Kim. You didn't.
Oh,
Kirk had his
sorry,
hand.
Kurt?
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to say I have a 45-minute report on the turf grass, but you can skip me. That's fine.
Skip you.
That's a
How do
joke.
you feel, Kurt, then?
That's a joke. But I do have a comment about KIPP.
Okay.
Just if we want to start the discussion there,
Yep.
is I think it is so. With that one, it's a great idea. It's entirely different than the original scope. I think for the others, there are definite connections for both of the Center for the Arts requests. This one is entirely different. So I think we need to have a discussion around, is that okay? That we can move to something that when we weren't around, there were extensive discussions. There were community organizations who did not receive anything, although their request may have had a lot of merit. So I think we need to talk about before we allow it, is it okay to have an entirely different shift in perspective without considering the thoughts of other projects? That's my thoughts on KIPP.
That's a good point, that there were other parties that were denied funding because of the original scope of this one. So how are we all feeling? Everybody else seems to think that that's a total change of scope, that this is not what they originally applied for. This is something that they've got the money and now it's like, let's change what we're going to spend it on. Grace?
Although it is a change in scope, it seems to me like the intent is the same. It's to improve the facility for what they are doing in the community. And it changed sort of not because the cost was more than they were told it was going to be. The intent is to make it a more usable community facility. And so although there is a change, I would support them getting the money.
Okay, Neil?
I was just going to comment on the change of scope thing, and as much as you say, and I see the change of scope in KIPP being a bigger change of scope, but I'm still not convinced that the Elora Center for the Arts putting an outdoor pavilion on there is in line with a study as to whether or not to put an indoor building in, like an indoor performance center. To me, those are two completely different things, and I'll take the guidance of this committee. I said that when I came on this committee is I want to hear from you guys. I don't want to direct the discussion, but I deal with this stuff all the time when it comes to residents complaining about noise and complaining about bars closing and opening and all that stuff. And now we're building an outdoor performance center, whether it's amplified or not. It's still an outdoor performance center. And to me, that's a big change of scope from an indoor performance center. So having said all that, that's a long-winded way of me telling you that I think that everything here has a change of scope, but council, and I'm the first one to admit this because I said it to you at the start of this process, council set a precedent by allowing it. And so we might very well have euchred this committee on its ability to say no, but I mean, we'll take whatever recommendations. So I want to hear from all of you, but I just wanted to share that from the start.
Okay. All right. Dean, how are you feeling about the KIPP?
Their intent was to improve their service that they're offering to the community. Even though it's a change of scope, to me, it's still with the grand vision of of how they're trying to spend these funds, because they cannot possibly do what they thought they would be able to do. They've come up with a unique way to improve their service to the community with this in their funds that they've been allocated. All three of them are definitely changes of scopes, and I'm a big believer in precedents that we must be very consistent on what we say as a group, and that's where I look at it is their intent is to improve what they've had in the past, and I feel that falls in line with what they're offering.
Okay. And then Kurt, my understanding is that you're thinking that it's too big of a change in scope for them, or do you believe in the intent behind it?
No, I would agree with the points from Dean and Grace. When I look at it that way, I was looking at it just in a physical change of a municipal water shift to a coverage. But yeah, it carries the same intent. With that one, if we are supportive, I think we would want some more clarity on timeline and costs. To me, it didn't feel that solid, and they are going to require some more funds. So I wouldn't want the project to get left again because there's a realization again that more funds are needed and maybe not a solid plan to secure those funds. So I don't know whether we're able to do that, but I think it would be good to get a little more clarity on the next steps for that project.
Okay. And Brian, how are you feeling?
Well, I guess it's almost like a very complicated little session in court, isn't it? We're looking at intent versus the letter of the law, and I'm inclined to be generous because I think the intentions of all of them are good, and they fall in a general way within their original scope. So I'm leaning towards that, but there's a bit of a precipice there, a kind of somebody who is much more legalistic, and it's easy for us. We want these people to succeed. They're good people and they've contributed a lot to the community, and I don't think they've stepped too far away, but Neil makes a good point. There's some of these are a little tricky, but I guess our job is to make a decision and support something or not support something, and that's ultimately we're not going to get it right every time. Witness maybe the sculpture project, but I mean, some people are still mad about where we decided to put the skate park. I still get negative comments about that even. So anyway, I'm generally in support. I would recommend to the council that we support these. But the KIPP part, I think they almost have to resubmit. They have to come up with better numbers, better timing. The other ones are pretty well founded, I think. Anyway, that's my feeling. It's kind of a maybe yes, maybe no kind of feeling. Conscription if necessary, not necessarily conscription. Sorry.
Mhm. Okay, so is that an option to have KIPP not really apply, but to redefine, to give us a better timeline and her costs and that what her fundraising efforts are going to do and be done within a certain time frame? Is that an option, Pat?
Yeah, I know that Staci had reached out to staff trying to get more details on approving her drawings and things like that. And we were like, we don't have a lot of staff time right now, so wait and see what this committee decides first. Okay. So yes, I think before the May meeting, if that's kind of where you're charged for making your final recommendations, that we can drill down a little further. I know from a staff perspective, we would want also some details on the size and location, really specific, because I think she would also have to ensure she has Riverfest approval. That is sort of where they load in and out a lot of stuff. And as long as it stays off the grass, I think we're good. But we just want to make sure that all of those, project details are ticked off. And that could also be part of the agreement for sure as a, attachment. But I think it's very fair to ask KIPP to resubmit more details. And of course, we can look at, which pavilion she's recommending to ensure that that is one we would approve for public space and all those kinds of things by the May meeting. She would have to do more of the engagement with Riverfest and also her project for fundraising costs. And the other thing with that project, just so you're aware, she does require a GRCA permit because it is where it is. And that is why she was uncertain of exactly what kind of foundation she would need for that. So it doesn't float down the river someday as it's in the floodplain. So there's some things we can definitely help her with, as well as she will have to just reach out to GRCA so that if we make this next step recommendation to move towards the pavilion as a positive project for KIPP and support it, that we are not going to run into more roadblocks down the road. I think that, and the timing will get further delayed, right? So I think we can definitely go back and ask for more information after hearing from her today. And if everyone's on that same page, that is your choice.
Yeah, it appears everybody's in support of that, so that we should pursue more information. So, okay, can we ask for that for the May meeting then?
Yeah, I don't know if Kurt had his hand was
yeah.
up.
Oh no, I'm in agreement with that. Although I do think a floating river kitchen would be awesome too, if it ended up floating on the river. And then, so I'm in support of that. I do have a question or just a clarification around the second Center for the Arts. But I'll let us close on the KIPP first.
Okay. So
what
we'll
do, yeah.
Make
a motion, yeah.
Okay, make a motion to direct staff to ask, is it Staci herself? Yeah, it was submitted by Staci Barron to supply more. Do you want me to list out like everything, like the GRCA permit, Riverfest, like that she needs to do to fulfill it for the motion?
Yeah, I think try and get as close to everything you're going to need to know to ensure there will not be another delay in building this project if it's awarded.
Okay, Devlin, get your little fingers going there. All right. So you specified GRCA permit. Does she need to have like zoning or township property approval, anything? You don't think?
No, that is property owned by us. It's just in the flood zone. So it's a GRCA permit, which is part of the process. She will need a building permit as well, I believe, because it's a structure. And then those would be the two approvals that would be required, as well as approval from the Parks Department to say, you could build it here. So that's why we're looking for very specific dimensions and location details.
So then she would need to supply also the specific dimensions and details to us as well. Okay. And then Riverfest approval. And then do we ask for like more of a kind of stamped down timeline that she's looking at to have it built by? And then the location, the size, and her budget costs. And are we wanting to know about fundraising? If she's doing fundraising, or that's just kind of, we only do this portion and she's going to do fundraising to match, but that has to be within the timeline too that she's negotiating. Okay, Neil?
I just want to talk about timelines because this is still COVID and you could get a building permit tomorrow that could be canceled by Doug Ford the day after, simply because nobody can go out and build. So, you know, we have to word it in such a way that they have a time frame in which we expect things to be met. You could put in there COVID delays excluded. So if we can tie the delay to COVID, saying, oh, well, construction workers can't come out because of this or whatever. My biggest concern, and Pat hit the nail on the head, is to make sure that the GRCA's approval of it and that the building department approves the structure and that she has a budget. And then I'm happy with everything I see. But that time frame thing, I'm really leery of because we've got COVID and it can twist. So Devlin can work his magic in there and get us some verbiage that says you got a timeline, but if COVID messes with you, you know, you've got some leeway.
Okay. Do we want a few minutes there, Devlin?
I think I've got the gist of it here.
Oh, really? Okay.
We'll say that CSAC directs staff to communicate with KIPP to supply the following information, and just pay attention and make sure I got everything here. So we have GRCA permit, building permit, community services approval, Riverfest approval, specific dimensions and details of the structure, budget cost, and timeline details.
And did we want details of fundraising as well, Devlin?
Yep, I can put that in there as well.
Can I just add, their fundraising is pretty minimal. Like they got a $35,000 grant and the cost of the project is only 36.
Plus foundation.
Oh yeah, plus the 5,000 for the foundation.
There's another 5 or 6 for foundation, I think.
Oh, okay.
So we just want to make sure she nails all that down, and
As an idea.
she may get in kind. I think the main thing is that the issue with these applications in 2018 is they were somewhat vague, which was the goal of council, to have vague applications so that anyone could apply and there weren't a lot of hoops. I don't know if anybody's ever applied for an application, you're expected to have, the drawings done in order to get the application in. So that was the intent, but it has caused some of these barriers to getting these projects done. So learning from that, if we're going to approve this, I think we get as much detail as we can. She may not have every piece of information by the time she gets back to us, but a little bit more than where she's at now would be really helpful for this group to be able to be confident that if they recommend this to council, that it will come to fruition at some point in the somewhat near future, if that makes sense.
Devlin, did you put in there that we would like it for our May meeting, May 5th meeting?
No, I can add that in though. That's not a problem.
Okay. Alrighty. That sounds okay. So then I need somebody to make a motion. And we have Brian, and then do we have a seconder? We got Grace. And then any discussion about the motion or changes that Devlin read, anything that we need to discuss? I'm not seeing anything. Okay, so then can we call all in favor of this motion? And anybody against? I've got all in favor. Everybody's good. Okay, that's awesome. So we're moving forward on that one. So we'll look to discuss that at the May meeting then. All righty. What was that next one? Multi-use performing. That was with Riverfest and Elora Center for the Arts. So that was the one where we heard from both Shawn and Matt. That's a big change in scope too, because that went from the feasibility study to an actual outdoor pavilion. Comments? Grace?
Well, what he made the point that the feasibility study came in the middle. The first was that they would have an indoor facility, and then they went, because they didn't get enough money, they went for the feasibility study and didn't do that. So the change in scope to me is not very big. It's going from indoor to outdoor, right?
Yeah, it looks like originally they asked for 622,000 for the indoor pavilion, and then they were given $100,000, which was, I guess, recommended that it be a feasibility study. So, and then now they're wanting to just utilize that 100,000 to build the outdoor pavilion, or not pavilion. What is it? It's a sound thing. Performing
Like a concert shell.
Pavilion.
That's it.
Yeah.
Band shell. There we go. Okay.
Sorry, Dorothy, if you were, or Matt can remember, the 600,000+ they asked for was only for some seed money. If I remember correctly, there was millions of dollars involved in building that performing arts center. Is that correct? And that's why that went back for a feasibility study, just so everybody here's up to speed.
I'm just going to pull out the application. Give me a sec.
Okay.
Not that that's necessary, but just so you understand where your predecessor committee went in their thought process and where we are today.
And we already know that Neil has issues with the noise levels and the bylaws, and that they haven't asked the neighbors. And Kurt, you had a point for this one?
Oh, just in agreement with Pat, if it was $100,000 feasibility study, I would think that the project itself would have been far exceeding $600,000.
Yeah,
Sorry, Brian?
one point that could be raised is that the feasibility study would have been 100,000 or thereabouts in the hands of a consultant. In this instance, we actually, with this 100,000, we are actually getting something. Notwithstanding the issues that Neil raised about noise, and having worked for a noise consultancy firm at one time, I know that it's a complicated process, but they're going to have to look at that.
Okay, Dean, what are your feelings on this?
Just the extreme pivot in where this project is going is really ultimately not what the original ask was for, is where I'm still stuck on. And getting past that part of it is where I'm having difficulties.
Okay. Dorothy, yes?
Yeah, so the original project cost was $4,600,000 for the Performing Arts Center. Big price tag.
Wow.
Yeah, and they asked for the $620,000 of MacDonald funding.
So would that have included their other grant that they got, like with the accessibility and everything, or they were wanting that in addition to that?
That was completely separate project.
Oh, all righty. Okay. Okay, so Grace, thoughts and feelings.
Well, it's a hard one if you're going to be really, really tough on the change of scope. But again, both ideas, whether it's indoor or outdoor, you're performing for people. I think it's a fabulous idea to have an outdoor performing center. There's so many groups that need a place to perform. I think it'd be really well used, and we're being encouraged by government, I read in our information, to use outdoor space as well. And this would really be a good use of outdoor space. I do have concerns about the noise, and that's why I asked about that. I mean, I don't know enough about this sort of thing, but I guess it is just it doesn't have noise. It's just a pavilion, right? So, I mean, I suppose they could build it without neighborhood approval or not. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel fairly positive about the idea of having an outdoor center, there's so many groups that need a place to perform, and outdoor would be great, especially we've seen in times of COVID how lovely it would be.
Okay.
So I guess I would say yes.
Okay. Brian?
One part of the piece is that I would think we need to look at hours of performance and things like that. It almost goes hand in hand with the noise issues. Lots of places, even Riverfest itself has had limits placed on it. So, I mean, I don't know if that could be built into it, but obviously that's a consideration, noise and when they're using it.
But is that our consideration, or is it, that's not our consideration? We're just approving the project or not?
Yeah, well, I think they would have to, part of that piece would be having to be concerned about that, but I agree that, I mean, it's not our point, but it is something that's out there.
But what our concern kind of is about is that they were initially wanting to do like a feasibility study, and now they're actually wanting to build a physical structure with the money. Did they have just that there's no electricity and that they would follow the bylaws about noise? We have that in there about evening facilities, etc. So, Kurt, you would like to say?
So two things, and if any adolescents walk by, sorry for their interruption. Two things. First of all, if we are looking at the intent and we're looking at the KIPP and their intent was to improve their facility for people in the community to use it, it's an extreme shift in what they asked for, but we just said that we supported the spirit of it. So then Center for the Arts, they want to improve performing arts in the community and offer opportunities for that. It's less of an extreme shift than KIPP in terms of a physical request, and the spirit's the same. So I think we need to be consistent there. Secondly, in terms of the noise, yes, it's a concern, but I think you also need to consider that kind of space is going to be used for the summer camp kids to put on their shows during the day. It's going to be used for the arts community to showcase things. It's going to be used for people to just go and hang out in the same way that the covered space at Bissell is used. I think that's their intent. From time to time, again, I don't know, but this is just from what I see in our community, and I'm a huge supporter too of live music, and have put on shows myself where if you're courteous to the neighbors, they're understanding. It's about how you approach it. But I think we need to look at it as it is a space. It could be a gathering space. It could be a performing space. It could be a space that creates noise from time to time. That happens in Fergus and Elora for various events. But I think we also need to think about the other opportunities that it could provide for the community that don't necessarily include noise and bothersome situations for the neighbors.
Okay. So pretty much everybody's feeling that the intent behind what they're doing is the same, because it was going to be originally an indoor performance area. Now it's just going to be an outdoor performance area that's going to be a little bit more open to things. Neil, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for the comments that I've been listening to. Grace, you made some great points about COVID and outdoor entertainment areas. And I want to be clear, I'll probably be the first one to attend a concert there because I love these kinds of venues. I just want to make sure that when we send this back to council, that we as a committee, or this committee, insists on some kind of community engagement, that the residents that live in that area, that have spent their life savings on a home in that area, are engaged in some way and get consulted before a band shell gets put up outside their front door. That's really the only caveat I would have here. I think Kurt, you made some great points there about, we changed the scope. This is a change of scope, but the intent is the same as it was from the start. And I'm okay with that. I'm always going to be one that insists that the residents who have already purchased land in that area and have their homes there, at least understand what this is going to be. As far as the noise goes, it'll fall underneath our noise bylaw. They'll have to follow all those rules. And I don't think this committee needs to get bogged down on that. But I do think we should recommend that there's some kind of community engagement so that the neighborhood has a say. And then if there's a problem, it's council's problem to deal with, not yours.
Could we also ask if they could submit like green space plans where they would use like natural things? Because Shawn is he not like a green space architect? Like, is he not like person that designs like golf courses, et cetera, that's outdoor? Because could he not be like, okay, well, if we put the band shell here, we'll do like trees, et cetera, around it to buffer the sound or to kill the sound down acoustically. And they did say that they were going to have a consultant of an acoustical engineer, was it? That he said that they would have come in so that they knew which direction it would flow. Could we recommend to ask them to submit like actual, like, this is where we're going to put it on the property. This is what it's going to look like. This is its dimensions. This is the way it's going to face. And that they go and talk to people around. Yes, Neil?
I don't think we need to worry about that. I think if we approve the project, let council deal with that.
Oh, okay then.
Okay, and that's our job, right? Pat might have a difference of opinion, but
okay, Pat.
Put Neil's home number on the side. No, just kidding. I was just going to suggest that you could give direction that those are to be considerations inside the agreement. So before the township signs off on an agreement to approve this, that they must provide some sort of consideration for sound or sound testing and design for sound absorption. And as part of your approval, if this is where the committee's going, by doing that, then that can also be a stop point where if they don't provide that, they can't build until but we want to approve the project, get to an agreement, issue the money, and then say, go ahead and get your sound testing and everything. But just like Bissell Park, they can't actually break ground until they provide the construction drawings. That's in the agreement. So there's times within the agreement where the staff can do checkpoints and ensure that the desires of this group or council are met.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Can we make a recommendation that this one be accepted? Everybody seems to be in favor of it except Dean Zillow on the fence there. So is it okay to make a recommendation that council?
And I'll say that listening to the follow-up after my conversation, and yeah, I think they're still trying to upgrade and stay within the spirit of what they do, which I can be swayed on that as we've had more dialogue on this, I'm starting to agree that within the spirit of their application, it still falls within the same line. So.
Okay. All right. So what do we want our recommendation then? Just to council to pursue this one, or to allow the change of scope in the agreement, or they would need a whole new agreement?
They don't have one yet, I don't think, because we never got there on this one. There's an agreement for the 380,000, but we never did get an agreement completed for this one on the feasibility study.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's correct.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there's no agreement, Pat.
No, I'm reliving the last 3 years on this. So yeah, I think we've been bouncing back and forth with them.
It was the committee that recommended the feasibility study, and I don't think Riverfest and the Elora Center for the Arts ever agreed with that one. So we never got to an agreement yet. So the recommendation could be to enter into an agreement for the pavilion or the band shelter, whatever it's called.
Outdoor performance pavilion. Okay. Can we do that as a recommendation? Is everybody like okay with this, or do we need more discussion, or we're okay with doing a recommendation to council for that? Everybody's nodding? Okay. Alrighty. Devlin. But can we put in there that the agreement includes, like, for the sound absorption and green space design and plans to be approved by township, et cetera, et cetera?
Yep, just give me a second to add the greens part.
And specifically, Shawn has to come up with trees that are native
Shawn
to
is
our
a-
area.
He's a landscape architect.
That's it. That's the word I was going for, landscape architect.
I have to tell you, just as an FYI, trees do not mitigate sound problems.
Okay, what about bushes?
No, you'd have to build. I mean, the biggest thing they would have is maybe if they had a back to it and it was facing away from where the majority of people are, which I think is the way they have it laid out right now on that drawing that I looked at. It looked like it was in the corner, but the front of it would be facing towards the building. But there are a lot of assumptions there. The building itself could become an echo chamber for it. But again, a noise and acoustics consultant could look at it and come up with some ideas. But trees are nice to make it look good, but they don't absorb sound.
Okay, and then to consult Brian on all the acoustical sound engineering. Yes, Pat?
I was just going to say, I believe there's a couple things you want in there, just within the agreement, that it include the engagement of sound professionals to demonstrate how the noise will be mitigated as much as possible. And secondly, and that could be trees, or that could be the slope of the roof. I have acoustic tiles in the roof. I have no idea. I'm not a sound expert. And then the second part, I think Neil keeps saying, is that the neighborhood needs to be engaged. That could be something that they would be responsible to do
Maybe an open
before
house
they can
or
build.
something?
What's
Okay.
that?
Maybe an open house or something with the project plan or something?
Yeah, open house or something on the website or something. So that's, I guess it's hard to have an open house at this time, but yes, somehow to engage the neighborhood. Am I getting I'm just trying to gather this for Devlin and gather some of your thoughts. Have I captured that, Neil?
Yeah, you've danced long enough that I think Devlin's got a motion written right there.
Does he?
Yep. So we got something we can start with at least. And we can certainly change it. So that CSEC recommend to council the approval of the Elora Center for the Arts and Riverfest Outdoor Performance Pavilion project be approved upon receipt of the plan for sound and noise control, including neighborhood engagement and a green space plan.
Is that right? Enter into an agreement's missing?
Yeah, I think it's and that the agreement require that those things are covered off, Devlin, because that will take them time. They need to get the agreement formulated to start the project.
Sure.
And that's just, the agreement would include that approval step.
Pat, I don't mean to butt in here, but are there also not parking issues and building code issues with accessibility and so forth that need to be addressed?
That is the other one, that this is something completely new on their property. Parking possibly. They did say something in their application about additional parking, but that is the other project, which is the $380,000 for accessible improvements, I think, Carrie.
No, I know, but if you're adding anything to the property, I think you're required to upgrade your accessibility to accommodate, are you not?
I guess it's whether or not they would open the washrooms of the facility for users of the pavilion. The pavilion is an outdoor structure, so I'm not sure. They would have to make the use of that, but it's just, I'm thinking it's park your chair on the lawn and watch a concert. But maybe we have to consider that closer.
I'm wondering if you just want to add the phrase "and not necessarily limited to," just because there may be other things that we just are not aware of as far as requirements for such a use.
That's a great point.
That we haven't considered.
It does require a building permit. It does require some other, I'm not sure if it requires site plan approval, but that's something we'll have to take to planning. Dorothy also has a thought.
Yeah, remember the Heritage Committee, because it's a heritage property, that I believe it's going to need heritage approval. Remember Brett sent that email out? Why are you laughing?
No, because the list is so long.
I know.
But I think I liked Carrie's idea. We've got a few other
Yeah.
things in there and anything else that needs to be considered prior to a build. Approval.
Yeah, subject to the necessary approvals or, you know, that all encompassing phrase that we use often.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get
That's
that in
it,
10 words or less, Devlin?
Yeah. 500.
The reference in the report about future parking was just that the location of their outdoor pavilion took into account potential future parking. And they also said that the cedar hedges would muffle and direct the sound, Brian.
Yeah, they said it, did they?
Well, and let's not be naive in thinking that we have a noise bylaw and enforcement where we don't. So there would have to be some kind of an agreement to that effect.
Okay. And then council, if council decides to review it and add other things to the agreement, that's up to them as well. Like that's their prerogative.
As Neil said before, I'll bet you most of the activities they're talking about would fall within the noise bylaw. So I don't think that if it's not electric.
What Carrie said is we have to get that bylaw fixed and we have to get enforcement on it. So, but it should fall under those categories. But, and again, you're making a recommendation to move the project ahead, and Kim's quite right. Council's going to add to it or jump all over, you know, problems that they see. But I think it's a good project to move forward with, as long as we have certain parameters and go from there.
Okay. Devlin, can you read that for us?
So that CSAC recommend to council the approval of the Elora Center for the Arts and Riverfest Outdoor Performance Pavilion project and enter into an agreement which includes a plan for sound and noise control, including neighborhood engagement, a green space plan, a parking plan, and be subject to any other necessary approvals.
Okay. Can I have somebody make a motion for this recommendation? Anybody? Throw up a hand. Come on. Oh, I see Kurt. There we go. Then can we have a seconder for it? Great. And then any discussion, like any issues about that? Nothing. Okay. And then we're all in favor? Anybody in favor? Hands? Okay, I think that's everybody. Yep. Okay, and any against? There's nobody against. All right. So then that's good. Correct? Okay, that's that one. And it is 8:04, Pat. Is it okay to continue on with the other one?
I don't know. What are the laws and rules about extending and how long meetings go, Devlin? I don't remember.
You guys can keep going, but we can't keep anybody here that doesn't want to stay.
Okay, does anybody have issues to cover?
All right, see ya.
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
Or do we want to set the other ones aside for, because it's like another month before we meet again to discuss these.
Personally, if everybody's up to it, I'd rather get through it.
Okay. Well, this one with the Elora Center for the Arts, that seems to be an easy one in my mind. How are we feeling on this one? Elora Center for the Arts. They are wanting to basically sit on the money until they find out if they get the other grant money it's a federal grant money. And then they will either get all the money and use it to do what they want to do to update and accessibilize their building, or if they don't get that money, they're going to use the $380,000 for doing what they said that they were going to do. So basically it's a sit, they just want to sit on it. So how are we feeling? Kurt, kick us off. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I was trying to put it simply, and you just did, Kim. So basically all they want to do is we want to use your money for basically what we said we want to use it for, but we might want to use it for this much, which will still incorporate what we wanted to use it for. So they're just asking for permission to sit on it for a bit in hopes of making grander use of more money, or use the money that they received to follow through on what they said. That's basically it. They're just asking for permission for time for a greater opportunity.
Yeah.
Right?
And council already kind of gave them permission to utilize that money in the way that they are using it. So they've kind of already been given the okay to do that with it. So, okay, so Kurt's good. Dean, how are you feeling? Does that make sense to you? Are you okay with them?
I can't say it any better than Kirk did. That's exactly the best case scenario, and I'm in favor.
Okay. Grace? Okay, she's got a thumbs up. She's just doing thumbs up now. Brian?
I agree, and I think, don't municipalities do the same thing? They hold projects until they get, with the possibility that grants will come. I think we just saw that happen, and Pat's going to tell us more about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a prudent use of money, and I think that the Center for the Arts has a great record for using the money and keeping that old building chugging along.
Yeah. And
So
Neil?
I'm thumbs up.
Here for it. Good. Neil, thumbs up. We got thumbs up all across the board. Okay. So with this one, you said already, Pat, that they have an agreement. Do we just have to make a recommendation to extend the timeline, or just that they're good?
I think there's just a report back to council that you have heard back from them. We had no timeline on this. So I think that you were recommending the following timeline, which was approval by this date, builds by this date, or whatever, which they've provided now. So just that you're approving or recommending the completion date as prescribed in their written information to you.
Okay.
I think that's all that we were looking for from this group. Was, if they didn't get the cultural grant, what was next? And they've answered that for us, so.
Okay. All right, so that's just, do we need a motion for that recommendation, or is that just a recommendation that it's all good and that they're going to have a 2022 completion date? Evelyn? Tell me what I want to know.
I'm just scrolling up to what the original request from council was. Timing of each project with reasonable expectations for completion dates. So probably just that your recommendation is the project proceed as planned and the expectation for completion date is.
Should we submit their little thing that they did here where they listed out all of the times? Like attach that as part of it? Because
Sure.
it gives like all their months that they are projecting to be done and everything, to be like the break ground and everything in there. So we could attach that for an updated timeline.
Sounds good.
Okay. Do I need a motion with that, or is that just?
I think we should just read that one out and do it quick here. So that CSAC recommend to council that the Elora Center for the Arts Building Enhancements and Accessibility Project proceed as planned with a target completion date of 2022.
Okay, it might be 2023. I'm seeing project completion March 2023.
We can change that pretty easily.
Okay, backspace. All right. Do we need a motion for that then, or is that just a simple recommendation? Neil,
Just need a mover and seconder for that, and
all right.
Everybody's already in agreement.
I've got Grace waving and Brian waving. So we've got that, and then everybody in favor. We're all good. Everybody's unanimous. Okay, look at us, tickety boo. Okay. All right, so everybody's in favor of that one, and then we can set that aside. And then, do we have to state anything about the bungalow 55 to accept and then put the money back, to reassign the money? Motion to.
Yeah, I think when they first announced to us that they couldn't use the money, we did send a remittance letter to just sort of close the file on it as staff. However, I think it's great if you just inform council that your recommendation is to accept the money back and to move, but your big question will be then what to do with the money. That's really, I think, what the council wants to know. And whether that sculpture money will be added to it is obviously for discussion as well.
Can we do the recommendation about getting the money back from Bungalow 55 or taking it back from them, but can we sit on it until we hear from the Bissell project for their phase 2 that we were going to talk about, like get them at May to come in?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's two different things. One is you're directing or you're recognizing that the project will not be complete and that the funds will be returned back to the township. And then your next motion in May could be how do you disperse those funds?
Okay.
Yeah. Or you can wait and do it all as one. It's up to you. We're going to be talking about this in May anyway, so.
Is it good though to get Bungalow 55 off now and then talk about dispersing the funds in May, or does it matter?
Neil has his hand up. Maybe he
Neil.
has a great idea.
No, I have no great ideas, Pat. I just wanted some clarification. This money isn't sitting in Bungalow 55. They don't have the money. They had a project that was approved. Township and the Jack R. MacDonald Foundation or Fund keeps the money until all the aspects of the agreement are met, and then they give them the money. So we're not getting money back. We're just saying this was assigned to this. Now we're going to put it somewhere.
Reassign it.
Yeah, reassign it. So.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that we're not going to have to go knock on the door of Bungalow 55 and grab the new owner and say, hey, you owe us money.
Okay. All right. Well, is there an agreement then already with Bungalow 50? Nothing with Bungalow 55. All right. Can we make a motion to change that we are not going to give the money to Bungalow 55 due to this is no longer a project? Dorothy's got her eyeballs crossed at me here.
I'm just trying to think of the right word.
Yeah, I know, me too. I mean, they never got the money. They know they're not getting the money. Yeah, we just got to figure out what we're going to recommend for that money now.
But council has to know that they're not getting it and that
Correct.
this is all tidy. Okay.
Correct.
And I think it's maybe just rather than a recommendation, because there is no recommendation to make. It is what it is. It's nor that maybe that CSAC acknowledges that Bungalow 55 no longer exists and that the funds are not going to be used for the project.
Okay, that's simple.
Something that simple. It's an acknowledgement. You're not really making that recommendation to council. Yeah.
Okay. Do we need a motion and a seconder for that? Or just acknowledging is fine?
We've acknowledged it. I would say that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Deb. And then we can discuss the reassignment of the money in May. Okay. So May, we need to discuss the reassignment of money and we need to see the Bissell, if they're going to come and present, and KIPP with her further information. So that's the other three. Am I missing anyone besides our sculpture project, which should we discuss the sculpture project in May as well? And then, because by then somebody will have formed a committee and can take it over and do it for us. So, okay, so reassigning money, Bissell, KIPP, and sculpture project. And okay. All right, so that takes care of that for now. Am I correct? I'm not missing anything? Okay, so can we move along forward with the agenda? Healthy Growth Advisory Committee update. Is that Brian?
Yep.
Okay.
I have good news to report that this sort of mud-slogged body is now moving forward. We've divided up into two subcommittees. We're looking at financial incentives for attainable housing, and we're looking at the zoning opportunities to facilitate that kind of housing. I'd be happy to talk sometime about attainable housing and what it's all about if you want, but you don't want me to do it now. It's been a long meeting, but there were changes made in the committee. We added a chap who's an architect. the meeting this morning had an ebullience that we haven't had in that group for a long time. So I have to tell you, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the Healthy Growth Committee and that particular assignment we have, because everyone's pretty much on whatever. We're ready to boogie on this one.
Oh, that's awesome. Good to hear. Reinvigorating. Okay, thank you, Brian. Indoor turf facilities subcommittee update. Kurt, is that you?
Hang on here. Hang on, sorry. A lot of notes. Yeah, I have no update.
Okay, thanks. Things are coming out. That's awesome. And council update. Neil?
Pat had her hand up first.
Sorry, Pat.
That's okay. I was just going to let Kurt know that from a staff's perspective, we really do hope to pick up that project this fall. As with many things, this is not the time to be doing a feasibility study, but we hope to gather your team together again in the fall to try and move forward on that. Okay.
Yeah,
so you know,
I entirely understand.
The money's still there and we're still going to do the project. Okay.
Yeah, no, I entirely understand. And every time I kind of reflect on it too, it's not near the top of the priority list to re-engage yet, but it will be soon. So that's good.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. All right, Neil, with your council update.
Well, we've covered most of what my update was going to be because we just spent the whole meeting working on it. That's kind of what came out of council at the last council meeting to come back to this committee. There is one other thing. We had some shuffling of committee members, councillors on committees being shuffled around for various reasons. And I'm glad to hear that, Brian, it's paid off and that the committee is now focused. So that's great. The other thing that came out of council was there was a notice of motion put forward by Councillor Kitchers several months ago about mental health and wellness committees, neighborhood groups. And it was a bit of a broad discussion that we had difficulty focusing. And so at the last council meeting, staff presented a report. Kendra had gone and researched what other communities were doing as far as neighborhood communities. And she brought forward a report, and then Councillor Kitchers put in an amended notice of motion about what he wanted. And we kicked those two balls around at council for a while. And it was decided, and I'm glad you're all here, that we would send it back to this committee to have a look at that. So at our next meeting, you're going to get a report from staff, and I believe Councillor Kitchers will be here, and Kendra Martin will be a staff member presenting her report. And then as a committee, what council's looking for from this committee is a bit of guidance about, how we mesh these two ideas together. Are they able to mesh those two ideas together? And we want to hear from citizens group, and we thought that this was the best citizens group to hear from. So yeah, we're dumping that on you. I want to be clear. There was the headline in the Wellington Advertiser said that council approved Councillor Kitchers's motion. Council did not approve Councillor Kitchers's motion. Council agreed that we would send both of these reports back to this committee. This committee would discuss it and decide and make recommendations to council as to how you think, as a citizens advisory committee, we should proceed. So that's coming our way. I want you to be prepared for that. That's really the biggest thing out of council that's going to affect this committee. But it's both proposals have merit. Both proposals are really good, and I won't say any more about them because I want to hear from what you guys think about that. So that's all I have for council. Council.
Thank you, Neil. That's great. Staff updates now. Parks and facilities update. Is that Matt?
Sure. No, I'll give a quick update here. Just wanted to report that we've opened up the tennis courts at the Sportsplex. The earliest I think we've ever opened them. We had them opened about halfway, about a week and a half ago. And tennis members and tennis players from the general public were quite happy just to get out and get some exercise. And it's just exciting to have this nice weather. Just with that, we're looking at resurfacing the courts at the Sportsplex. Just in conversation with the tennis club and also some pickleballers. I think we're going to try and push that project and do that project in the fall. So tennis will be there for the season. Also, just looking to help out the pickleballers. Once we get some consistent warm weather, we're going to look at putting pickleball lines on the courts at the Sportsplex. So that'll be open for the pickleballers as well. So that's one thing. And also, we're looking at spring cleanup, getting out a lot earlier. We're looking at, you're going to see our staff out downtown in the gardens, just getting prepped for spring. One other quick item, just with the vaccine clinic. It's been very successful. Just this week, we've had the local doctors, they're doing a vaccine drive-through clinic at the Elora Community Center. That's been going quite smooth. I know their first day, they had a bit of a backup. They had a bit of an IT glitch that was resolved, and just chatting with them, everything's been quite smooth. So that one will finish up on Friday. And just at the Sportsplex, it's still going strong. And again, it's all dependent on vaccines. So the more vaccine that come in, the more clinics we're holding at the Sportsplex. That's my update.
That's great. Good. Thanks, Matt. Neil, question?
Yeah, Matt, you got the tennis courts and everything opened up, but we're closing them tomorrow, right? Like this stay-at-home order shuts them down again, right?
Yeah, sorry, Neil. And that's I should have mentioned that as well. So we're that stay-at order came out around 3 o'clock this afternoon, and we haven't received all the literature yet on what can open and what can close. So I know tennis has reached out to us asking us that question. I said we'd be getting back to them tomorrow, just once we read the fine details. Yeah, it's a yo-yo. It's crazy.
Great. Okay, any other questions for Matt there? We're good? Okay, thanks, Matt. Cultural and special events update. Dorothy, is that you?
That would be me. I don't have a lot to add to it other than I will confirm the Elora Community Center drive-through is magnificent. I got to go through there today. So that was kind of cool. And it was awesome. So in and out, no problem. We just got an announcement yesterday that the Fergus Fall Fair has canceled their event in September, which is very sad. So pretty much another year of no events. The only other thing I wanted to add is I'm getting, and I really wanted this for the minutes, I'm getting quite a few phone calls from service clubs right now. And they are desperately looking for funding opportunities. And unfortunately, with our grants that we have, service clubs are exempt. So I just need to put that on the radar somewhere and maybe have a discussion at our May meeting. Thinking some of the, I don't know, I'm worried about our service clubs. They're in need. And as we know, sorry, I have a few dogs barking right now. Can you just take them out to the kitchen? I don't know what the answer is. I just need to have that conversation with this group that that is a need out in the community right now. And I think we're going to have it at this meeting in May, further discussion on it. So that's my report.
Okay, thanks, Dorothy. Any questions for Dorothy there? Nothing? Thanks. Departmental and capital projects update. Is that Pat?
Yes, it is. Thanks, Kim.
Yay. Thank you.
So yeah, just to expand on what Matt was saying in our department, we since the April 1st announcement of the Saturday going into provincial-wide lockdown, shutdown, whatever they're calling it these days, that all of our indoor facilities were required to close. the ECC ice has been taken out. And we have had to put a number of our part-time staff on designated emergency leave, infectious disease emergency leave. We had planned to open the Victoria Park Senior Center in April, which will not happen. And we had plans on the weekend to open the tourism office, which did not happen. The washrooms are all still available with extended hours at all of our outdoor washroom sites in the downtowns. But that is to help support the dining, which you can no longer go in the restaurant to use the washroom. So we are very aware of that. And so we are looking at opportunities to use municipal washrooms, public washrooms, and increasing our garbage collection to address that need for takeout. Today's stay-at-home order was silent on parks and recreation, lots of information on retail and things like that. Nobody can tell me whether liquor stores are essential yet, looking for that clarity as well. But ultimately—
Let me clarify that for you right now. They are essential.
Okay, thanks.
They better be.
Yeah, they were silent on it, but you can still get toilet paper, so that's good. We're still, as Matt mentioned, trying to gather the details on that. Garden centers are to be able to remain open, so that will help us. We will be launching a lot of our staff out into the parks again. Sports fields, doesn't look like you can do any kind of gameplay yet, but we've got to drill down to whether we can rent them out for practices yet in this lockdown. But then we realized we really don't rent them out till May anyways, so this lockdown should not affect our sports user groups for outdoor spaces. It obviously impacts lacrosse for indoor. So we're working with everybody as much as we can and trying to keep our staff whole and employed for full-time staff. The other thing I wanted to bring up was some additional work that this committee will be tasked with. So if you remember, over a year ago, we had started to look at the community impact grant policy, and you had made some revisions, and we never quite got that over the finish line. So this year we had to revert back to the old policy. So that is going to be a task that we need to pick up and complete before we get to budget season. We'll be taking applications for that funding. And then there's also the OLG Arts, Heritage and Culture Grant that we were asked over a year ago to look at solutions. COVID hit, we didn't get that done. But before we get to the budget season again, we will be tasked with coming up with recommendations for allocations of that fund as well. So just giving everybody, we're becoming the policy to give out money committee, but it's all good news for the community when we do. But we need a sounding board, and this group is that wide depth of our community that is represented. So that's some things we get to work on as well. The Elora Community Center announcement was very exciting. It was a little bit shadowed by the lockdown announcement on the same day, but very good news. And I did forward to this committee some of the basic information that was released on that. So just for clarity, it is just under $5 million for benefits to the Elora Community Center. And I sent out the breakdown on that. So for the township, the cost is just over 1.3 million. The province is 1.66 million, and the federal is just under 2 million. So for every dollar being spent, the township is only spending 26.7 cents. So we're very excited about this, and it will be, couldn't go to a better facility. The Elora Community Center is a hub for this community and has been a challenge for accessibility. Is due for some renovations as some components are at end of life, specifically the ice pad and the refrigeration underneath that pad. As well, we've always had a vision that more programming could take place at that facility, and this will allow us the opportunity to create some programming spaces for seniors, youth, families, just basically, hopefully we're adding on a multi-purpose room. So if I go back to I know all of you did write support and for this grant. It was, I don't know how many, 18 months ago we applied for this and finally heard about it, which is all good news. So I'm sure you've heard most of the list of things that are happening, most of the arena, floorboards, glass, and some of the refrigeration equipment. We're going to look at moving where the refrigeration equipment is and also the room that the ice resurfacer is stored in. So it's further away from the lobby to improve safety, improve accessibility for the viewing area, the washrooms, the hall. Ideally, we'd like to increase the size of the hall for better recreation opportunities and increase parking, larger meeting spaces. And everybody keeps talking about the addition of solar panels, which was sort of a hope that we can do to improve our operating costs there. We'll have to see what we can do with that once we dig in. And then a generator so that this can be used as an emergency shelter. Our first step on this project is to hire a consultant. It will likely be an architect. So we will be preparing, and we have already started months ago, preparing the request for proposal to hire an architect to support this project and design the project. And as part of that process, the design process, it includes community engagement, and this group will be part of that engagement process. So we will probably, I think I have in there at least 2 times the consultant will visit with this team to hear what we want this renovation to include and what our priorities are from the community. And then once we have some design drawings, bring it back to this group again for further input. So you will definitely be part of that. We also will have other ways of public engagement that the consultant will assist staff with. So we're very excited about this opportunity. We're also somewhat stressed out a little bit because it's a huge thing to take on, but so exciting for the community. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has about the grant or the project. Thanks very much. That's mostly what I wanted to update everybody on, Kim. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Pat. That's awesome. Always great news. Okay, and that leaves our next item. Next meeting will be May 5th, 6 p.m. Everybody's good. And Kurt, you're waving. You have a question?
I just, because I saw an article, I'm assuming it's accurate, but it's question and answers around our current situation, and it indicates that tennis is good and liquor is good. I just thought I'd let people know that.
So drunk tennis playing we can do. That's good.
Absolutely.
All righty. Is there any other questions or anything before we call for adjournment? Everybody's good, feeling happy, gonna make your stop at the liquor store now? We're good?
You did a great job, Kim.
Hey,
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for all your hard work tonight, guys. It was not an easy meeting, but it's greatly appreciated.
No, it was very good. Good, good. Thank you so much, everybody.
Cheers. Good night.
All right.
Talk soon.
We adjourn. Thanks.